Alex Boone with me, Matthew Coller, Purple Daily, if you could not tell. So what do you think of that, Alex? You were on a football team that got over the hump, and that seems to be a big conversation. Is like, how can this team go from being pretty good and real close in 2017, having the talent a few different times, but maybe bad luck befalls them in 2016 with Teddy Bridgewater's knee, and even in 2018 to some extent, I wouldn't call it bad luck, but a wrong decision at offensive coordinator. Some more things didn't break their way. And then this year they get pretty far and they win a playoff game, and it was exciting for a week. But ultimately, I think it left Vikings fans with the same sort of feeling they've had in past years, like it just wasn't enough. So on teams that actually get to the Super Bowl, what is it? What is that element that Coobs would know and Capers would know, and the people who have gotten there that the Vikings don't seem to have?
You know what, dude? The one thing I got to say that I love about this Tom Capers signing, first of all, is it's something different. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that some people are kind of looking at this and they're a little upset probably because they're like, dude, what is going on in there? Like, they're bringing all these people in, they're changing things up. But sometimes when you throw things off the wall at different people, they come back in a response that maybe you weren't expecting, or maybe it helps you see something differently. And to me, that was always the biggest advantage that we had the year we went to the Super Bowl, is that for whatever reason, like, it was like, have you ever seen the movie World War Z when he talks about the law of 10?
I
Where,
have
like,
not. No.
well, he talks about how, like, I think it's either the law of 10 or the law of 11. It's whatever happens. Like, if 10 guys come to the same conclusion, the 11th man's job is to come to the exact opposite to make everybody think differently.
Interesting.
And that's exactly what I thought of those years when we were really, really good, because it was like you would see a guy like Greg Roman in front of the room breaking down an offense for us or putting in plays. And it was like somebody in the back would say, hey, listen, I got a problem with this because I don't think that it would be wise for us to go block, man on. I think we should go block the safety, and this is why. And Greg would like sit up there with his sausage fingers and he'd go, all right. And he'd legitimately think about it. He'd be like, you know what? That's a great idea. Let's do that. Like, it was never like, everything was always different, and people had different ideas, and they were so, instead of being like reluctant and being like, no, this is my offense, it was like, you know what? It's actually a great idea. Let's do that. And they always wanted input from the players. They always wanted to know how it was going and what we could change. And is there something we can add on? Is there another level to this offense? Which there was absolutely no level you could add to that offense. But when you talk about it, it was so many different perspectives rolled into one, and there was never any fighting with anybody. Like, it was always like, well, you know what? He's a really smart guy. He probably knows what he's talking about. Let's listen to him. There was never any like, dude, this dude's young. Sit down. Like, I remember rookies were like chiming in, like, hey, listen, we should think about doing this. And coaches were like, no, I never thought about that. That's pretty smart. We should do that. Like, it's everybody working as a collective, and like, with the common goal instead of against it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so last year we wondered around this same time when they hired Gary Kubiak mysteriously, and we didn't know what he was doing or how he got here or who called him or who was paying him or any of those things, and they wouldn't say. We naturally had to ask the question, is this going to be too many cooks in the kitchen? Is this going to be a conflict between Kevin Stefanski, who wants to run his own offense and be his own guy and get his head coaching job, and Kubiak, who is the guy who has been around forever, almost like a sheriff in Texas in a small town, let's say, that all of a sudden runs into something too powerful for even himself and is forced to reflect. Anyway, but Kubiak comes in, and I could totally see the Brolin thing. He needs a mustache, though.
Yeah,
I think Tommy Lee Jones is what Kubiak will look like when he's even a little older. Ooh. Anyhow, but it worked out really, really well. I mean, Stefanski's got his head coaching job in Cleveland, and they put up the best offensive numbers under Mike Zimmer. And so with Dom Capers coming into the mix and the co-defensive coordinators, probably if this had happened last year, I might be looking at it and saying, what is even going on here? Who is coaching the football squad? A million different people. But these are guys who have been around for a very long time and seem to have a lot of the same sort of goals. And with the fact that Zimmer has his people that have been with him for a long time that know his defense, and then someone else who has a completely different defense playing a 3-4 for back in the day with the Steelers, I mean, I kind of like the mix. I can't be behind the scenes to know exactly how that's going to work in each room, but from a defense that might need a few new ideas, I don't hate it.
No, you have to love it. I mean, it's something different. It's a different way of seeing things that maybe Mike doesn't see. But when you talk about guys coming in and not understanding how to gel, I mean, you're talking about Gary Kubiak. Like, these guys have a reputation on the line as well. They don't want to be the guy that comes in and destroys something. They want to be the guy that comes in that helps monitor the situation, helps him grow it. I mean, look what Gary did last year. And he's the prime example because here's a guy, and I want you to think about this. Here's a head coach that's coached in Super Bowls and has done probably some of the most amazing things you can do with an offense. And he has to take a back seat to a guy who's at like first time being an OC. I
Right.
mean, you talk about the humility that a guy has to have. I mean, truly have, because that's a humbling experience when you walk in the room and you're like, "Well, are you the OC?" He's like, "No, that young kid is." Like, it's cool, and at the same time, it's great. But imagine how he was feeling at the time. Like, I'm sure there was times where he was like, "Man, I could have done that better. I should have done," and he just kept pushing in the right direction in a positive way. And I think that speaks to his character, and also to Dom Capers the same way. These old school coaches, they're not going to come in and start fires. They're not just going to come in and blow up the building. They're coming, hey, listen, we're here to help. I'm 70 years old. I want to win. I want to win a ring. I'm not here for the drama of it. You talk about Dom Capers, a guy who was so well respected. Like, when I saw that he signed here, I was like, man, I wonder how Green Bay feels about that. Like, they're probably pissed as hell. But because there's another thing that you can add. There's so many things that you can help with an organization when you're like, listen, I've been in that org. I know what they're doing. I know how they're thinking over there. There's another level of advantage that you have in bringing in a coach like that.
So let's say that this means, because I tend to read it a little bit like this, that they believe they just need a little bit more with what they have to get over the hump. And that this will largely be a status quo offseason, even though I will come up with, for this show's purposes, exactly 10,000 crazy things that they could do. They probably won't do that many of them. They won't trade Kirk Cousins. They probably won't trade Stephon Diggs. And I wouldn't even be surprised if Everson Griffin ends up coming back on a new contract, even if he voids his deal because he can and becomes a free agent. Zimmer loves his guys, and it just wouldn't be surprising to have a lot of the same people here again with a few minor tweaks. If they do that, Alex, Vikings fans will be upset. But how bad of a move would it be to bring it all back with now Kubiak and Capers in the mix?
I mean, when you're obviously looking offensively, I'm not as worried as I am defensively. I mean, when you talk about you're talking about bringing Xavier Rhodes back and just letting Anthony walk away. I mean,
You'd probably move on
like,
from Rhodes, but maybe you say like keeping Trey Waynes or something like that would be status quo, and then you replace Rhodes
Anthony,
with Mike Hughes.
All right, yeah. I mean, you're talking about keeping then Trey. Then yeah, I like that move. I think that there are some pieces that need to go, but I also think that you need to upgrade a piece or two. I think that every offseason you need to throw in, and I've said this last time, fresh blood, but not only that, but somebody that is really, really good at what they do and can come and bring in new life and can show a different perspective as well in the playing field. I mean, a Byron Jones, someone like that. I mean, you're going to need something on the defense. I think it's great that you have two co-defensive coordinators, and I think it's great that Dom Capers is coming in. Like, you're taking steps in the right direction, and they're all good. But somewhere you have to elevate the talent on the defense. Like, it needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it needs to happen. Even though that last year they were still very good. It's just, can you actually get anywhere with it? I mean, not with a good defense. They think that they had a good enough defense this year for the most part to be a legit contender. And in San Francisco, okay, eventually they got run over because they never had the ball and the defense wore down. But the defense gave them a chance to be in that game, and the defense and Dalvin Cook largely won the first game in the playoffs. But they were let down by not having enough on offense in San Francisco, which, as we saw from the Chiefs, a lot of people had a lot of trouble with San Francisco on defense. But in the playoffs, you're going to run into somebody who's good and who can rush your quarterback. And I guess if we're talking about running it all back with the most standard type of Vikings moves, let's say they draft a 3-tech and they bring back Waynes and they just sort of do a lot of the same things. Maybe there's left guard who's the 4th or 6th best free agent left guard that they bring in to replace Pat Elflein. Like, these things aren't moving the needle a whole lot. You're going to believe they'll still be a very good team, but if the goal is to be a great team, I just don't see any way around doing something that's bold. You know what I mean? Doing something that goes kind of off of the beaten trail a little bit and changes up the fabric of who you are to some extent. If you run it back out, I think you get mostly the same results.
I agree with you. I just said this before. I think you need to change it up and get some. But how bold are you talking? I mean, there's catastrophically bold, and you're like, listen.
That's usually where I live.
I know, and that's what makes me so excited, because as soon as you say that, like, all of a sudden these thoughts start popping in my mind. Like, you're like, dude, I mean, how catastrophic are we talking?
Well, what's catastrophically bold to you?
I mean, catastrophically bold to be like, listen, we're trading Kirk Cousins and we're going to draft somebody. Like that is when you're like, you know what, dude. And just to be honest with you, like if I was a player on a team like that, like you just headline across the phone, you're like, no way, that just happened.
Yeah.
Like I remember there's a few times where my phone would buzz, you'd be like, this is it, man. We're in the belly of the beast now. and But it's not a bad thing. It could change. I mean, listen, if you give up Dalvin, I don't think I could ever be a fan again because that's just the best part of watching this games is watching that kid run over people. But
Yeah.
there are other moves that could happen that you could be like, dude, even if you did that, I'm just being honest. And listen, I'm a realist, and I feel like everybody else is not a realist in this world because when you guys come to me and you're like, "Can you believe that this is going on in the NFL?" I'm like, "Yes." How could you not believe this was going on? Like this has been happening for years in the NFL. But if they were to trade Kirk, would it really be that like, oh my god, to you?
Only because the guy who signed Kirk to the huge contract would be the one making the move. And I just think of this team as being sort of stubborn. And when they have one of their guys, they keep them, that they re-sign everyone. It would have been bold for them last year by their standards to let Anthony Barr go and say, sorry, man, we're just not going to pay for somebody who gets 2 sacks a year and a handful of pressures. And even though that's not your job can be replaced by somebody else. It would have been bold by their standards to do it because of just how they've operated under Zimmer, which is with a great deal of loyalty. And I can respect that, but eventually you get to the end of the road and maybe that's how they're seeing it. I don't get the feeling they are though, right? So that's why I go into this offseason thinking, yeah, there's going to be some interesting moves, but the level of extreme, nauseously bold craziness is probably going to be low. And at the top of that list would be trading Kirk. But if you're the general manager who signed Kirk and you go to your owner and go, see, what happened was he's just, I thought he could run a little better and he can't. So now here's what I'm doing. I just don't know how much the owners are going to look at it and go, wait, didn't you just tell us 2 years ago that Kirk was going to get you to a Super Bowl? Well, yeah, but what happened? You know what I mean? Like it might be a tough sell to be like, yeah, we're actually going to trade him for Dak Prescott now, or Jimmy Garoppolo or something.
But that's something that, like, if you listen to Michael Irvin, could be possible because according to Mike, Tom Brady's going to Dallas, which is going to free up Dak. But here's where I'm really confused right now. Zim and Spielman's contract is up after this year, correct? That instantly puts you into a win now mode, unless you know something that nobody else knows. So if you are in a win now mode, is Kirk Cousins really the dude you're doing it with? That's what I'm saying. Like there are win now modes that you see guys like, wow, they are really in it to win it. Like they'll do anything they have to do. Is it going to be like that, or is it just going to be like another? Hey, we're really going to ride with this team again this year. This is all our chips, unless you know something that the rest of us don't know. Because when you're technically on your last year, if you don't go into the playoffs or at least deep, they're like, listen, look at Jason Garrett. They were like, listen, man, we've had our fun, we've had our run. We can't do this every year, and we're good.
Yeah, and that's what I wish I could just sort of sneak in and get, kind of bug some of the rooms in there and hear whether they think that or not. I mean, now I agree that they have run it to the end and it needs to change. Like that's how I look at it is you've taken this as far as you could take it. And if you run it back, you're not a Super Bowl contender in my mind, even though Zimmer's going to think I could coach up these guys and the front office is going to say, no, I'll find a draft pick that'll work. But you don't know that. Last year, your draft picks worked out great. The year before, the guy tore his ACL and you never got to use him. So you can never look at your draft as in it's going to fix problems right away. Free agency is usually just like you're getting yourself in trouble a lot of times. Look at the left tackle position. I saw a study from PFF today, your friends over there, on how signing left tackles is one of the most risky things you can do because it doesn't usually work out the way you want it to. If someone's letting go a left tackle, more or less, there's a reason. So it kind of stands to reason that would be the case. That's the way I have gone into this offseason is thinking if you run it back and you hope for different results, it's kind of the Einstein quote that everybody uses that, it's the same thing, hoping for something different. And you could still be very competitive. They could still have a really fun season and they could still play on wild card weekend and not make the Super Bowl is kind of how I look at it. So somebody tweeted me earlier in the offseason and said it would be risky not to be bold, which is sort of a, fun little sentence.
They were right.
And I agree with that,
Yeah, we talked about it. And that is exactly, and that's why I said that I do feel I'm not confused right now, but going forward, like into free agency, it's going to be interesting because this is a win now mode. Like you are officially in the win now mode. And so it's going to be like, man, what do they do? How crazy do they get? And I think it would absolutely, like, I think when it was like, what, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked about that. And I started laughing because I was like, oh, come on. But when you think about it, it is the riskiest move you can do to say, hey, listen, we're all good right now. We're just going to ride out with this. Like, man, I don't know, bro.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You're going to need at least a couple pieces in there to fix some things if you really intend on doing this. And to me, it really is the back end because you're seeing all these quarterbacks step up now. Like I'm really watching all these replays of these games this year from some of these quarterbacks is incredible because you never really notice how good they are until like everything's done. You have your winner and you go back, you watch a few games, you're like, man, that guy was really incredible. The plays that he can make, the back end, they had a standout. I mean, look at San Fran. They had a phenomenal defense and they got taken for in the 9 minutes of a game. 9 minutes cost them a Super Bowl on 21 points. That's incredible. And that's like one of the best defenses. So yes, when you're looking at this going, hey, what are we going to do? We're going to do something big. We're just not sure what yet, but we know it has to be something.